Okay, it's 1 o'clock. The first thing we want to do is take care of a burn ban resolution, or lifting the burn ban. It's resolution 2017. The Lincoln County Commissioners hereby rescind the state emergency disaster emergency proclamation of 2017-10, effective on March 27, 2017. Basically lifts the burn ban for Lincoln County. We discussed this previously. We moved, but we need to adopt this resolution. I need a motion.
You moved. You did, and I seconded.
But we didn't have
But
a
I didn't have a
for the
resolution
resolution,
number.
Yeah.
2017-10, I will move.
I'll second.
Move and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. We need to sign.
Yes. Thank you. Here. You said this.
Okay, Kristen, I guess you're up. So you want to do some introductions?
I'm Kristen Robinson, the owner and administrator at Lincoln Park Manor. This is my husband, Justin, co-owner of Lincoln Park Manor. A couple things today in regards to moving forward with the county. One is just general business that I need to take care of. The PTAC unit and assisted living. We usually have the two backups. We're using one backup right now, so that just leaves the one. We need to purchase a PTAC unit. We did price quotes. Got 4 different price quotes. They ranged from $820 for a unit that didn't have as many options, and we have to do extra wiring to fit with our thermostat, to $940. Waddles came in at a better price of $914.40. We would like to get that purchase for the assisted living, apartment number 4, unit right now.
Is that what the air conditioning unit?
Yes,
Air
the
conditioning
PTAC unit. And it was for $914.40. Our census is 29 right now over on the nursing facility side and 6 in assisted living. And today, to move forward with presentation of contract, we would like to maybe broaden the perspectives a little bit and present some different information to look out before we further negotiations with contract. Alexis had contacted John Grace a couple of weeks ago, who presented some proprietary information to us, and he is here today to present that information and have some discussion afterwards.
Okay,
John
John.
Grace.
Okay. Afternoon, everyone. Nice to be with you. So, I represent, if I could spell it right, Kansas Senior Living and Senior, Kansas Senior Living.
Did you get this in another country?
Yeah, I guess so. So, this is a nonprofit corporation. We're based in Topeka. We're designated by the IRS as a 501c3 organization, which means that we're eligible for tax donations, gifts, grants, those kinds of things. Our mission is to serve the elderly in an honorable way through the building of new greenhouses across Kansas. And I'll talk to you and show you what a greenhouse is. And the principles of our company are I'm totally committed to continuous quality improvement in our programs and services, always looking for how can we improve. Secondly, I want to make sure that we are an integral part of the community in which we reside, that is being a good neighbor, participating in programs, supporting programs, the schools, those kinds of things. And then third, to try to attract and retain really good people, because you can't have good care if you don't have good people. then there's another company, it's a private company, it's just called Grace Team, and the members of the Grace Team are myself. I served for 20 years as the president of the trade group of all the nonprofit nursing homes of Kansas. So I did that. I was the first administrator at Meadowlark Hills in Manhattan. And if you go to any football games, they're on the north side of Manhattan. There's a big retirement campus, and I was there in 1979, and it was built. And then went to the trade group. It was called Kansas Homes and Services for the Aging. So it'd be like the Kansas Association of Counties or Kansas Association of Municipalities, trade association. So I did that for 20 years, and then the last 12 years I've just been working with small communities across Kansas. Mark Mingenbach is on our team. Mark lives in Great Bend, and Mark was, for 14 years, he was with the Central Kansas Medical Center, and it was owned by some sisters, I believe, out of maybe Denver. But Mark was the director of business development, and then he was a physician recruiter, and then ended up running their foundation, raising money. Ryan Grace, our son, my son, is administrator in Olathe at a Catholic diocese facility. Karen Millsap is an accountant out of Great Bend. And then Linda Farrar is a nurse consultant. She lives in Lawrence. And then Kathleen Holt, we use Kathleen for fundraising. She lives in Cimarron, Kansas. And she's very, very good at raising money in small communities. These are the past clients that I've worked with. Just completed a project in Cimarron. It was a replacement of a 1965 built nursing home, and we built a 28-bed new nursing home. And we got funding from rural development to do that. Working in Spearville, which is just about 17 miles east of Dodge City. It's a small community, but they would like to build a couple of greenhouses with their apartments that they have. South of Hutchinson, in Phillipsburg in 2011, helped that nursing home to build a new 10-unit assisted living building, and now they're expanding it to 16 units right now. It's been very popular. Plainville, Kansas, worked with the county commission there, Brooks County, and the county built a new 12-unit assisted living and attached it to the nursing home. So that it's very nice. And then I worked south of Hutchinson in Pretty Prairie. We remodeled the nursing home and then built a new 12-unit assisted living. So all of these, that project and the others mentioned earlier were part of a rural development funding. Those were fixed rate loans over 35 years. Right now it's about 3.3% interest on that. These are the groups I'm now working with in Cheyenne County. The government there, back in 2010, they had a fire at the Good Samaritan nursing home. So the citizens decided to raise the mill levy by 6 mills, and they want to build a new 10-unit assisted living and then remodel the facility. So we're going to issue revenue bonds through the Public Building Commission in Cheyenne. And we'll do that for $5 million, and then the community is going to raise about another $800,000 in gifts and grants. In Smith County, many of you know that they're going to build a new hospital. They're going to build a replacement hospital. And the hospital has a 25-bed long-term care unit right now. And with the new hospital, they will not have long-term care beds. So we're going to work with them and build new greenhouses there on their campus to replace those beds. And then we'll be adding some assisted living and some independent living. Managing a nursing home. It's a Lutheran facility in Belton, Missouri, which is 12 miles south of Kansas City. It has 126 beds of nursing and then 55 assisted living. Been working working with Kansas Masonic Home in Wichita for the past 9 months, just on some planning efforts. And then in Junction City, there's a nonprofit group called Aging Well, and they want to build a new campus there in Junction City. So I'm working with them. So those are the current clients that we have. If you look at your demographics, you're like a lot of small rural counties in Kansas. You have an out-migration of young people, and you have the elderly who are, who grew up here, who want to remain here and be a part of the community. So the Wichita State University has done some population projections, and they're showing here that in the year 2025, that you will have 31% of your population will be people 65 and older. And then if you look at just broadly across Kansas, the average is 18%. So you're going to have a very high percentage of elders living in the community. I looked at the census and some statistics on Lincoln Park. Looks like in 2010 was your highest year of census. You ran about 34.5. In 12 you dropped down, 13 gained back in 14, 15, 34, and 16. What'd you run? Remember?
It was probably around 30.
Okay, all right. And I think you said right now is 29. So this has been the payer mix of residents who live there. The blue line represents your private pay folks. These are individuals who have been saved all their life and have their savings account and are just paying monthly, writing a check for their care. As you can see, it's gone from almost 60% now down to 47%. Pretty common all across Kansas. We're seeing a decline in the private pay census. And that is because it's expensive to live in one of the nursing homes in Kansas. The average private pay rate now is around $185 per day. You go to Topeka, you're looking at $300 a day for care. And then the growth of Medicare, you can see there, you've been over 10%, and I think most recently you run around 5 or 6%. This is an important aspect because the federal government pays for Medicare, and the federal government would like to pay for more Medicare because they would like to see people go to the nursing home, get rehabilitation, and then go back home. And that's what we would all want ourselves. We want to be rehabilitated and go back home. So if you look at this chart, the average in Kansas is 10% Medicare. If you go back 20 years, we had very few nursing homes that participated in Medicare. It was just a complicated program, and the federal government wasn't paying much. And now they're encouraging it, so I'd say 95% of nursing homes participate in it now. And then Medicaid is a combination of state and federal money. And just as your private pay has decreased, your Medicaid has increased. And that is when you run out of money, the state and the federal government will pay for your care. And they don't pay for all the costs, but they will pay for a lot of the costs. So that's been the mix. And here's your rates compared to some other facilities. I put down Wilson here. Their private rate is around 140, a little bit over. Their Medicaid rate, though, is quite higher, 186. Ellsworth, and Kristen reminded me that I got these rates from the self-reporting from the facility, and sometimes they don't report the accuracy. So sometimes they have add-ons to the rate, so you might get admitted at $145 a day, and then it's another $5 or $10 a day based on your care. So what I did, when you look at, just like if you were planning any business, you look ahead and you look at the demographics of the marketplace, and you estimate how many services would you need in the future, based on in our case, based on the number of elderly living here. And there's some commonly accepted percentages or methodologies that are used. And if you were to stop the clock here in America, there would be about 3.6% of 65 and older that live in nursing homes. Okay, that's nationwide. But when you go to a rural state like Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, you're going to see a higher percentage if you stop the clock here. And that is because we don't have as many options that you might have in a metropolitan area. You take a city like Johnson County, you know, you have home care, you have transportation services, you have adult daycare, you have maybe independent living apartments. So all kinds of things that allow people to, you know, stay at home longer. So the common in the rural areas is 4.5 to 5% of the 65 plus live in nursing homes. So if I use that percentage, then I'm saying that in the future, you're going to need 38 beds based on the 65 population, or if you wanted to be more conservative, you could say you're going to need 26 beds. So that's the range that if we were all gathered here today and we were going to say, well, we need a plan for the next 30 years. How many beds would we need of skilled nursing for the future? I'm saying that 38 beds I think is a pretty good number to use, particularly if you have a good product. When I say product, if you have a good facility, a good design, good program, good services, you're going to attract people. Now when you look at assisted living, and that's the care where you're going to get 3 meals a day, but you don't need full nursing care, but yet you can't quite live alone. Then we use a percentage of 5 to 6% of the 75 and older. Now this is an area here where you're really underbedded, is how I would describe it. I think you have, is it 8, 9? Yeah, you have 9 assisted living. But if you have a good product, good program, that this is where you could have quite a number here, and I'm saying as high as 45 units. That might be a little high, but just based upon looking at other areas of the state. You go to a county like McPherson County or Newton County, they have a very high percentage. And then on the independent living, this would be where someone says, look, I don't want to take care of this big house, I've been living in it all my life, I'm tired of mowing the lawn, and I'd like to move somewhere where I can have a nice apartment, all on one floor, and maybe get my lawn taken care of, maybe some meals, those kinds of things. And that's usually people that are 75 and older are the people that are living in these units. And I'm saying your total market can support about 29 apartments. I don't think you have any now, do you, in the community?
Just
Subsidized? Yeah. So, when your facility was built in 51 years ago, roughly, 56, it was state-of-the-art. And your community gathered together and you all said, hey, let's build a new nursing home to serve our elders. And you planned, you thought about it, you probably went and toured some other facilities, you saw what was there. And so at the time, it was very common to share a room. Sometimes you would even have 4 people in a room. My dad was a World War II veteran, and he was a fireman in his life, and he ended up in the Methodist home in Topeka. And he was just very grateful to have a roof over his head, 3 meals a day, and friendly people around him. I mean, that he didn't have high expectations. Well, as we look at these at today and looking ahead, then we're asking, what should we be providing? What will be state-of-the-art in the future? And there are 3 components that I like to describe. One is there's a greater emphasis upon health and wellness. My dad, he hardly, the only time he would exercise, you know, when he'd be swinging a hammer or something. But today, you know, it's very common to have health and wellness programs for people, the YMCA's and places like that. And even though maybe we don't all participate in it, we really want those services available to help us rehab if we get into a health situation where we need some help. So health and wellness should be part of our program. Secondly, technology. Used to be you could walk through a nursing home and you'll hear over the loudspeaker, you know, Betty, pick up line 10. Or, you know, you'll hear lights, you'll see lights flashing and bells going off. Well, that was all part of the technology of the old days. And now we have new technologies where, like certified nurse aide, she can have a beeper, and it'll say, you know, Mrs. Jones is ringing room 604. And we can track then how quickly that nurse aide will respond. And the nurse surveyors, when they come in to inspect, they will look at those, and they give you a couple minutes is all they give you to respond to that. So new technologies are there. And then third, my dad was happy with whatever they served him in the meal. Me, you know, there's certain things I like, certain things I don't like. So it's true with other people coming in. We want more choices, we want flexibility. I don't want someone telling me what time I'm going to get up in the morning. You know, if I want to have a bowl of cereal today, and tomorrow I want to have some bacon and eggs, that's the kind of programming that we want to develop. And actually, we're asking the simple question, what would you want if you lived there? That's what we ask. What would you want? And I think all of us would say, well, yeah, I don't want somebody telling me, you know, what I'm going to eat and what time I'm going to get up. I want to have more flexibility in my life. So this is just a range of services that can be offered. And you you look at the left-hand side. So this is where you're 65. Maybe you're living in your own home, so you participate in the senior center there at the bottom. You might have a wellness program at the YMCA. And then as you move, as you get older, 65, 70, 85, 90, we become more frail. We maybe lose a spouse. And so we need a little more assistance. And so in the middle here, you can see assisted living. And then as you move farther to the right, you can see skilled nursing, hospice care, memory support, that is for people that have Alzheimer's, rehab care, and of course the hospital care. So ideally, if we could develop this continuum of care in this county, this would be the best way to approach serving the needs of elders in the future. It's not just one thing, it's saying everyone has different needs along this age range, and we have a little bit of each to meet the comprehensive care needs of the elders. So I mentioned independent living. These could be apartments, and they would range anywhere from 650 square feet, maybe up to 1,000 square feet, 1 and 2 bedrooms. Everybody would have their own kitchen. These are folks mostly that are pretty independent, still have their cars. You might have a central dining area where people can come together for the noon meal, programs and services. Assisted living, this is a picture of the building in Plainville. You can see it has a nice porch on it. There's some 1 and 2 bedrooms. They're about 460 square feet on a 1 bedroom. You get 3 meals a day, housekeeping and laundry, and social and recreational activities. There's a staff person around the clock in the facility. The only thing about assisted living right now is that it's primarily private pay, meaning if you run out of money in assisted living, most of the facilities in Kansas, you're going to have to move out. So you would probably move to a nursing facility where your care will be paid for. And then the new model that's emerging is called the greenhouse. And on the right-hand side, when you look at that, how many of you would say, well, that's a nursing home? You would say, no, that's not a nursing home. That's a house. Well, that is a nursing home. That is a building that is 6,300 square feet. It has 10 bedrooms in it. All bedrooms have their own bathroom. It has a nice large living room here, as you see. And you can see a dining table there, and then you see a country kitchen. So that is the definition of the greenhouse, okay? And let me show you this, this video here. Okay.
Connected to changing MacBook Pro.
Bill Thomas came to the foundation to talk about this idea of creating a different way of providing long-term care for frail elders, moving away from an institutional model into small houses.
Within a few hours of when we moved those people in there, there was a peace that descended on the house. And people were saying, it's so good to be back home.
What we look for is those ideas that are going to transform a field, that create the impetus for significant change.
Nice to get out of the room, but it's too nice to get back home.
So the way this came about, pretty neat, isn't it? Pretty neat setup. The way this came about 11 years ago, there was a physician, he's still living, Dr. Bill Thomas, and he lives in upstate New York, and he'd been working with a whole bunch of pretty much rural nursing homes And he was going around the country, you know, giving talks about trying to come up with a different design for a nursing home. So he hooked up with a fellow from Tupelo, Mississippi. And it's a Methodist facility. And they had 120 beds of skilled nursing care in a big building. And it had 2 nursing stations with 3 wings off each one, which was, you know, we have the same architect for all nursing homes in America. It was the same design wherever you went. So Steve was getting ready to build another 120 bed nursing home with the same kind of design, but it's just going to have, you know, new colors on the wall and things. And Dr. Thomas said, wait a minute, you know, what we're trying to do with, everybody says, do not ever put me in a nursing home. We all want to live in our home as long as we can. So Dr. Thomas said, let's try to build something that is really home, like our home. And so instead of building that big monster, they built 12 10-apartment houses. And what you saw here, they're all 1 story, and they're all around 6,300, 6,500 square feet. And so, very fascinating when they moved the residents from this big monster to these new houses. So there are lots of stories, but people that were sitting in the hallway that we oftentimes see that are grouped over, well, they're depressed, they're on medications. People like that, when they got into these houses, they blossomed. And the University of Minnesota studied the movement of people, and they determined, now there's 200 of these houses across America. There's one in Newton, Kansas. But the University of Minnesota studied, and they found that people who live in the greenhouses, number 1, they use less medication. 2, they have a higher level of satisfaction in life. They're less depressed. People that they have less hospitalization and less infections. The families enjoy these facilities, and the employees enjoy working in them. And the turnover is lower than you would have in a traditional nursing home. So the outcomes, it's the program that I've shown you here is not just the building, but it's the program of care. And rather than having all these siloed departments like we often have in an organization, you have dietary and social service and housekeeping and laundry, they have here a universal worker. And this is someone who is a certified med aid who becomes your companion when you live there. And they provide the residents and the staff help to prepare the meals. They partake in activities together, you know, put puzzles together and things. And then we have a nurse who works between 2 houses. So you have the 2 people during the day staffing, and if it requires that we make your bed, help you take a shower, whatever it may be. So we eliminate that kind of that middle row of people, and we put more money towards a direct care staff, with the idea being that if we can have that at a higher level, then we can hold our costs down overall. So the last slide I have here is, as Christine said, we're wanting to have a little more time to talk about how we could work together to bring you a more formal proposal or option. And in that process, one of your options would be that your lease on the building would go to Kansas Senior Living, which is a nonprofit. And then if we built the new greenhouses, I'm estimating that the total cost would be 6 to 7 million, that we could use the funding that you had anticipated to go towards a remodeling, to go towards the building of the new greenhouses, and then we would set up an arrangement to borrow the 4.5 million through the USDA Rural Development or through the bonds. If you did I know you have a public building commission, so it would be like what you did for the hospital, you issue bonds. And then Kansas Senior Living would lease the facility, and we would pay back you the amount so that you could pay off the bonds. All right? So there would be no additional tax dollars involved. We would get the revenues from our residents, Medicaid, Medicare, and pay back the loan. And then we would help to make sure to get all this done with the coordination of the building of the new facilities. That's one option. That's where the county would own it. And another option that we would like to bring to you would be where the county would really get out of the nursing home altogether. And Kansas Senior Living, as a nonprofit, would build the new facilities, okay? And then we would own them and we would operate them. So that's kind of a broad overview of my presentation. Now I'll stop and answer any questions and be able to, like I say, if you would give us a little more time, we'll come back with some more details about how all this could be done. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Questions? Comments?
I guess I would have to ask what responsibilities you would have on the county if you did option one that was on your slide, as far as would you want us to still maintain the buildings and all of the costs and everything associated, and then again, are we not kind of getting back into the same situation where no rent's being paid to offset those costs?
Yeah, if the county chooses to own the building, then you would be responsible for maintaining the building. But we would be paying you a lease payment to cover the cost of the payback on the bonds. And we would have to negotiate anything else that I guess you would want in the lease, but we would be responsible for operating the program. We would require, no subsidy from the county for our operations.
Would it be your thinking that we would replace the existing facilities with a cluster of these greenhouses?
Yes, yes.
And you said how many in 10?
Well, right now, there are 10 people that live in each one.
So we need 3, 4 of them.
3 or 4 of them, yep. And I'd like to be able to do it on the property. Doesn't have to be, but I know that you've got sewer and water there, and I know that you've got your assisted living already there. And so I don't know that there's enough room on your existing property, but I drove around a little bit, and there is a vacant lot to the south. I don't know who owns that or anything. And then across the street, there are a couple of lots, it appears. These are not connected, okay, but they need to be nearby.
I have 2 questions. 2 concerns would be job retention and cost to the resident. So what are we looking at as far as a change in cost to the resident to provide a big enough rent payment if it were paying back the bond, or excuse me, I won't say bond, let's say just the borrowing, however we borrow the money, to pay that back from the nursing home, generating enough revenue to do that? What is going to be the cost increase, and is there going to be an actual reduction in the number of needed employees? And I know you may not have the details of that, but just maybe something to consider.
Let me speak to the employees. Generally, if we were to take over the lease, I'm going to keep the employees that you have. And then as we plan the services in the future, people will have an opportunity are going to, you know, if this new project requires less staff, you have turnover and things. But I'll say this, as long as people are flexible and they're willing to maybe be retrained for other jobs, I think there'll be a job, okay? Because like, as I indicated, we're trying to eliminate the middle layer so we can have more hands-on. That means that someone who's working in dietary now might need to get trained as a certified med aid, and then they can work as a universal worker. Now, as far as the rates for the residents, the rates are a function of how much debt that we have, okay? So if for instance, you guys said, hey, you just go build it, we're getting out of the business, we're not gonna help at all, the rates are gonna go up. Because I'm a nonprofit, but I gotta pay our bills. So, on the other hand, if I could raise money in the community to support this project, and I'm doing this in other communities, because people see how valuable it can be. Because honestly, if you want to live here in this community in the future and you're elderly, you have a 50% chance of living in this facility. That's just the statistics. So, but also then what kind of Medicaid rate I can get and what kind of Medicare. Now, my occupancy is another factor. These facilities run 95% occupied. The typical nursing home in Kansas is 88%. Why do they run so high of occupancy? Well, you can see, would you rather move into one of these or rather move into that 56-year-old facility? And we accept Medicaid and Medicare, so we're not going to discriminate on private versus Medicaid. We take everyone. So those are the functions, but we will be able to come up with a better number on what that's going to be.
In your documents, you had put that you did private pay and Medicare, but then you just, or Medicaid, and then you just said you did Medicare. Do you do Medicare services for skills, like if people were coming from a hospital to recuperate?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd like to do about 10%, which is the normal. You can do higher, and I think we could do higher, which would be, if we had 40 beds, that would mean 4 people on Medicare. See, Medicare pays a lot higher than Medicaid. Medicaid, you know, I don't know what your rate is, 170?
No, it's 155.
Oh, okay. Medicaid, 155. Medicare is 450. So, now, a lot of that goes out for therapies and things, but it's still a much higher rate.
I see the advantages of having a newer facility like that. That would be a big draw to the community for people from other communities and other counties seeing this. And I could see that this could be a very good thing for Lincoln County, economically. And I think it would be a really good thing that we need to work into this, because right now I feel that the nursing home building is draining the county unnecessarily. We've let it go too long, and now it's a do or die situation. I could see people more willing to go into a program like this, where KSL would take over the thing, and that would free up the county from the monkey and be a boon for the community. I could see many jobs eventually coming from this, because I could see this thing expanding larger than just a few.
The average age of the buildings in Kansas, of the nursing home buildings, is 37 years old. So, Wilson, the Good Sam in Minneapolis, all of these facilities are just like yours. I mean, they're very old. And what happens is that the facility that is nice and attractive will draw people. Otherwise, you're going to have people that grew up here, and let's say their daughter or son lives in Salina or, Topeka. they're gonna say, Mom, we have a brand new facility here in our town. Why don't you come move here and you can be near me? Now, Mom, in a lot of cases, will say, well, I'd rather stay here, but yeah, okay. On the other hand, if you have something nice here, Mom's gonna stay here. And her son and daughter are gonna say, we're really happy that you're there because, Mom, we have nothing like this in our community.
I don't discount what you're talking about as far as the facility goes. Looks like an interesting idea. But somewhere along the line here, we're going from a plan, spending $2.5 million on a 6-year payback to spending $7 million on a 30-year payback. I'm not gonna be here in 30 years. He's not gonna be here in 30 years. He may sign a 30-year contract, but there's gonna be an out in it, I guarantee you.
I'm not sure what you mean by 6-year payback.
That's what we had figured on the remodel project,
Who's paying back for the remodel?
the wind farm.
Well, that's not a payback. The way you worded that, you made it sound like the investment was going to be
Well,
paid back.
the project to be paid for in 6 years.
I thought you were, if you used wind farm money, you were considering using, that's like cash
But
assets.
it would be replenished back to the figure it's at now in 6 years.
No, you're never gonna get that money back, ever. You're talking about you signed a new contract to get additional wind farm money. You're not talking about recuperating the money.
You may not get that $7 million back either.
No, I'm just trying to understand what you meant when you said a 6-year payback. You're making it sound like the investment is going to make a return on itself, but
No.
that's not the way I
The
understand.
fund's gonna be replenished in 6 years. Is that better? You like that better? That's a hell of a lot sooner than 30 years.
But isn't that next wind
I'm
farm
not sure.
money earmarked for the schools?
Of
Part of
course.
it. Percentage of it.
I think the other thing we've got to consider is that the commissioners in December made a contract with Johnson and Campbell to come up with a plan of how to remodel the existing facility. We haven't even seen it. We don't know what those proposals are going to be. We're under contract with him, whether we like it or not, and I believe that we will have to and need to sit down with them, Campbell and Johnson, and see what they have. Maybe they have figured out a way to incorporate some of these ideas into the new plan. I think we all want the best for our senior citizens. But we've got to remember, I think, folks, that eventually the taxpayer is going to pay the money one way or another. And when we start talking about borrowing money, this county has been in debt, and it was not easy to get out. And we were very fortunate the wind farms come along. And I think we need to be very judicious in what we do here. And I have no problem of you developing more, Mr. Grace. But at this point, we need to also bring in Campbell and Johnson and see what they've done. We're getting a little ahead of the horse here, cart ahead of the horse here. We got to see what everything is on the table here. And you had a good presentation. You had some good ideas, and a lot of them I agree with. A few of them I question. I've been involved with newer nursing homes in the Wichita area, and I'll tell you, it was a disaster with the person I was working with. A total disaster. He was totally out of culture. I will just say that. And he came back to Lincoln, and he has done much better, and he feels more culturally at home. He wasn't used to that kind of living, you know. And this rest home, people here offered that different culture, you know. So I think we've got to think about the culture of our people here that are going to be living there, most of them, and what they're used to and what their demands are. I don't think they're the same as they are in Washington, D.C. or Augusta, Florida, or Georgia.
Well, last week we talked about as a board calling Campbell and Johnson because we voted to pay their initial bill, and like you said, no one has been in contact with them.
Standing right
So-
behind.
And right there.
Right, so I think that, you know, that needs to be explored if no one's been in contact.
Do you need to discuss your lease with us and our attorney?
I scheduled I scheduled another meeting time
Okay,
next
okay.
Monday
Okay,
at 1 o'clock.
okay,
For time purposes, I knew we would be
okay, yeah.
running into a time issue today.
Eric, do you have anything that you want to share with us?
I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights here.
Yes, you are. Sorry about that.
I was not aware that we are considering doing something completely different here.
This is our first taste of this, so don't get the wrong impression.
Okay.
I mean, this is the first we've heard of it too, so.
And we can do new buildings, that's not a problem. In fact, it's a lot easier to do a new building than it is to remodel. Like John was saying, John and I are familiar with each other, we've worked with on other nursing home. We can do pod type living. That's easy for an architect to do. But it's gonna mean, someone's gotta make the decision what we're gonna do with the residents between now and when that occurs. If we do it on the same site, then you got the issue that John was talking about, is that you displace those residents. They've gotta go somewhere, and they may not be coming back. They may be coming back, depending on the culture you're talking about.
And how far along are you on showing us what your proposals are for what we talked about in December when we contracted?
Yeah, when we